day of Writing Clinic. Today we're going to be talking specifically about combining sentences. And so one of the 4 categories on the writing rubric is language. And in order to get a 4 or a 3 in language, you have to have varied sentence structure, meaning we can't just have a bunch of short sentences in a row, can't have a bunch of long sentences in a row. You have to change it in a way that is meaningful. Not only that, but for just our reader in general, we get super, super bored if we have the same thing again and again. Changing up the sentence length can help your reader stay more focused, and it honestly just makes your reading more pleasant. Your writing more pleasant to read. And so I have a couple of examples here of what that would sound like to change. And of course, none of you is writing like this. Notice that since none was the subject, I used is the singular verb. Since none of you is writing like this, this is an exaggeration to just sort of prove the point. Miss Morton is Dean of Culture. She planned color war. She met the color maker. Miss Morton likes to read. Miss Morton went to the University of South Carolina. Miss Morton has a brother. Miss Morton's brother is married. Last year was the wedding. Miss Morton was a bridesmaid. Now, honestly, that sounds more like a list than it does a written paragraph. In contrast, if we start combining sentences, adding transition words, it sounds so much better instantly. Miss Morton is Dean of Culture, which means she gets to plan things like color war and that she gets to meet the color maker. Beyond her job, Miss Morton loves to read. When she was at the University of South Carolina, Miss Morton had to read all of the time. Finally, Miss Morton has a brother who was married just last year, and Miss Morton was a bridesmaid in the wedding. One of these is a list, another is a paragraph. We want our writing to sound more like a paragraph. What made sample 2 more effective? Hopefully you were able to identify some of those features. If not, I want to give us a few building blocks that tell us exactly what we need to do in order to combine sentences. Now, if you feel like right now your sentences are exactly the same again and again and again, this first option is probably the best tool for you to start with. Option 1, we use comma plus fanboys. Hopefully you remember the fanboys. Take a minute to think of them. If you've forgotten, it's for and nor, but, or, yet, so. If you were not able to come up with all of those, please write those down. For and nor, but, or, yet, so. If you have a comma and a fanboy, you can combine 2 simple sentences. So if I have 2 complete sentences, Mr. Snow teaches science, a second sentence, he studied science in school, I can pick a fanboy to join them. Here, I think and makes the most sense because I'm adding additional information that's similar. Mr. Snow teaches science, comma, and he studied science in school. Option 2 is the semicolon. The semicolon essentially plays the same role as a period. A lot of times before you have what's called it's like a special kind of adverb called a conjunctive adverb, like words like however, therefore. Sometimes people say you should have a semicolon before that. It's not technically necessary, but a lot of the time that's what we do. So Miss Turner went to F&M, she studied accounting. Miss Turner went to F&M, semicolon, there, comma, she studied accounting. Notice that you still need the comma after the transition word. So if I'd started that with however, therefore, any of those things, I would have to have a comma that follows it. In general, if you are using a semicolon, your 2 sentences should be related. Miss Walmer likes to put it like the semicolon is makes 2 sentences hold hands. And it would be weird if 2 strangers had never met each other, talking about totally different things, are just standing there holding hands. But if there are 2 ideas that are related, the semicolon can make them hold hands, and that makes a little bit more sense to us. The last is the trickiest because it requires that we understand the difference between an independent and a dependent clause. So we know an independent clause is a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. A dependent clause is just when you have a subject and a verb, but you do not have a complete thought. Any independent clause can be turned into a dependent clause by adding certain transition words to the front. I've attached to today's Rethink lesson a handout that has a bunch of what are called subordinating conjunctions. These are all of the conjunctions that if I added them to a complete sentence, it would make it an incomplete sentence. For example, the word while, W-H-I-L-E, is a subordinating conjunction. So I have the complete sentence, Miss Arth loves to read. I have a noun, which is my subject, Miss Arth, a verb, loves, and I'm complete thought because she loves to read. If I add the word while to the front of that same sentence, while Miss Arth loves to read, it suddenly is no longer a complete thought. We're sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop to find out what the opposite thing is, because while she loves to read, she also loves something else. If you don't feel totally comfortable mixing up your sentences right now, I would not necessarily recommend starting with this. Here are a couple of examples of how it's done. Mr. Dempsey is the principal, period. He started the year as a science teacher, period. Again, by adding a subordinating conjunction, although to the start of the complete sentence, Mr. Dempsey is a principal, I have turned it into a dependent clause. Although Mr. Dempsey is now principal, comma, he started his year as the science teacher. If you have a subordinating conjunction at the start, the clause needs to be followed by a comma. If you don't need the comma. So if this had been written, he started the year as a science teacher, although Mr. Dempsey is now principal, I wouldn't necessarily need a comma before although. I would need one after. So coordinating conjunctions are our fanboys, for and nor, but or yet so. Coordinating conjunctions plus a comma combine sentences. Semicolon combines two related sentences. A lot of times the second sentence then starts with a transition word that's followed by a comma. Finally, if we add a subordinating conjunction onto a complete sentence, that gets us a dependent clause, and we start to make what are called complex sentences, meaning sentences that are built out of parts that don't only have complete sentences in them. If you look at option 1 and option 2, everything there is a complete sentence, whereas in option 3, although Mr. Dempsey is now a principal, that clause on its own would not be a complete sentence, which makes it complex. What I would like you to do next is you're going to look at each of the following sentences, and I want you to combine them using one of the 3 techniques above. If you don't feel super comfortable with maybe making dependent clauses, go ahead and use just the simpler ones like a semicolon or a fanboy. You'll do this on your own, and then I want you to do some more practice. In the first round of practice, you will just do simple sentence combining, meaning this is a complete sentence, this is a complete sentence, and you're going to join it with a fanboy, which I've put up here in case you forgot. Following that, I want you to start using that subordinating conjunction, which are those more difficult ones to do. This is the time where we might be having an incomplete sentence on one end, which means that we have to combine it into a complex sentence with the complete independent clause on the other side. This is likely going to be the most difficult part of the exercise, but I'm excited to see how you do. Finally, I've made some egregious errors in this last page, and at the start of each line, I have the 2 sentences, and then I have done something to combine them that is incorrect. I need you to tell me what I've done that's incorrect and fix it. These are some of the mistakes that I am seeing in your writing, and I want to make sure that you're not making them also. After you complete this, there is an exit ticket on Rethink, started at 4 p.m. at the latest. If you finish early, you may take out your IR book. Good luck, and I'm excited to read what you write.